Hey everybody, this is the fourth here, and in this video I wanted to introduce you to another technique regarding compression and dynamics processing. And this technique is sidechaining your kick and your bass. So your bass frequencies can get very muddy very quickly, and they take up a lot of space in your mix. They take up a lot of headroom. And if you have any problems in your lower frequencies, it's going to be very noticeable on a good sound system. So you really want to take some good measures to make sure you're getting a nice clean bass and that your kick and your bass get along pretty nicely. So sidechaining your bass and your kick can really help with a big part of this. And basically the idea of this is you don't want your bass to interfere with your kick. You don't want there to be any phase cancellation between your kick and your bass. And you don't want your bass to boost the levels of your kick on accident so that you get a really loud boom sound or anything like that. So sidechaining can really help you fix that up. So here's my bass sound. It's just a saturated sine wave, and here's my kick. And you can hear that the kick has some nice lower bass tones. And if I play them together, they definitely play at the same time, and they're kind of overlapping a bit. So it might be smart for me to do some sidechaining here to increase my headroom and to help ensure that my kick and bass aren't conflicting. And in this example, I don't hear any huge problems, but I do hear certain things that can be kind of helped by doing the sidechaining. And so what I'm going to do is just sidechain the kick track to the bass track and put on my sidechain compressor and select the appropriate sidechain input. So you'll see now that my kick is the sidechain signal for this bass sound. And when I do this, when I am sidechaining my kick with my bass, I like to put a low pass filter on the master to help me isolate just the bass frequencies. And this allows me to turn up the level a fair bit more and just really hear the bass really clearly and focus on just the bass. And you can hear right now, the kick gets a little bit too boomy when that bass is playing. If you play either of them on their own, it sounds, not particularly bassy. But when you play them together, you get a lot of boominess, and that's something that doing the sidechain will help with. So what I want to do is just adjust the threshold and the ratio to an appropriate level and really listen to the sound and do my best to get it to sound exactly how I want. I probably want to avoid pumping effects just because it doesn't sound that great, in my opinion. Some people might like that kind of pumping effect. It's really up to your personal taste. But I like to have a really clean and smooth transition from my kick to my bass. So that's what I aim for. And what I try to do is find a balance between, getting the kick really clean and keeping the transition between the kick and the bass nice and smooth. So really, how you set these different parameters is up to you. If you know how a compressor works, if you know the parameters of a compressor and what they do, you'll have a much better time. But hopefully I'm going to explain things so they make a little bit of sense. And right now what I've been doing is adjusting the threshold and the ratio. And that's just because I want a good amount of reduction in that bass when the kick hits. Just so that the sidechain is effective. But you can hear that I'm still having kind of a pumping effect on the bass. The bass kind of fades in after the kick, and that's not something I want. So I'm going to reduce the release time, because if I turn the release up, I get more of that pumping effect, whereas if I turn it down, I'll get less of that pumping effect. And you can see that I've kept the attack instant, and you probably want the same to have a very short or instant attack, just so that your compressor reacts instantly to that kick sound and kind of pushes the bass out of its way. And I'm still hearing some pumping that I don't like. And you can hear that just reducing that release. It's helped with it some, but it's not the biggest help. So what I might try doing is increasing this threshold. And you do want to be careful not to set the release time too short, because you'll see if I have a very short release time and solo the bass, I'm getting some weird distortion kind of happening, and I don't get that with the higher release times. So a lot of the time what I personally aim for is as short of a release time as I can have without that distortion. But what you do, is going to be up to you. So that sounds pretty good to me. Let's listen to it with that sidechain off. You can hear that it reduces that boominess. With the sidechain off, it's kind of boomy, especially on that higher note. But when I turn it, the sidechain back on, it's a lot nicer. It's a lot cleaner sounding. So, really it all comes down to adjusting the parameters and spending some real time listening closely and, just getting it to sound exactly how you want it to sound. So it's definitely going to take some practice to really get the hang of it. You'll definitely need to be familiar with how the different compressor parameters affect the compression. But hopefully this video is helpful, and hopefully you have a little bit better of an idea on how you can use sidechaining to get your kick and your bass to play together well.